Hey, Film Recaps is here. And today I'll recap a 2024 comedy drama movie named Miller's Girl. The story begins with a girl named Cairo, whose parents lived in another country. Cairo lived alone in a lonely house where writing became her hobby. While coming from the forests, Cairo reached a class where she met Jonathan Miller, a middle-aged man who couldn't become a successful writer and became a teacher. When Jonathan came to Cairo's class, he told her to read some books from the syllabus, but Cairo had already read all those books. Then another girl, Winnie, came into the class, who was not only a student in that class but also a good friend of Cairo. They both went out to eat where Jonathan saw an adult book similar to Cairo's. Boris, Jonathan's friend, also came for coffee and started reading the book with Jonathan. Both Boris and Jonathan were shocked when they saw a copy of a book written by Jonathan in Cairo's possession. That night, Jonathan's wife Beatrice was busy with her work, so Jonathan tried to divert her attention towards himself by telling her that a student in class was reading his book. After the incident, Boris and his wife went out for a drink together. As they got closer, Jonathan got a call from Amy and left. The next day, Jonathan told Boris about everything, and Boris started making fun of him. Just then, they saw Cairo coming from the forest, and Jonathan had been watching her carefully since the previous night. He asked Cairo if she wasn't afraid coming from the forests, to which Cairo replied, "I am the scariest thing in those forests." And Jonathan started laughing. Winnie dropped her books inside the school. Boris knew that she did it on purpose, so he asked Winnie what she wanted. Winnie was teasing Boris on purpose, and Cairo also saw it and told her, "You are completely crazy." Later, they both went to Cairo's house. Cairo was worried about her college admission due to a question she had to answer. They discussed many things, but nothing unique came up. Then Winnie suggested that Cairo should have an affair with her teacher and then write about it. Cairo said, "Jonathan is 20 years older than me," but Winnie kept convincing her that it was normal and that Jonathan was a gentleman. For Cairo's first time, it was perfect. Winnie kept talking about Jonathan, how he looked at Cairo in class. Cairo felt embarrassed hearing all this. And Jonathan's interest in her increased more from the next day. Cairo started staring at Jonathan, and when he came close to her, he asked her to meet him after class. Jonathan invited Boris for dinner. They danced a bit, here and there. Jonathan tried to do the same steps after Boris left, and that's when Cairo arrived. They laughed it off and ignored the incident. Jonathan was impressed by a paragraph written by Cairo, and Cairo was thrilled by his reaction. Jonathan starts reading the story Cairo wrote, which impresses him so much that he remembers it for 2 years. Cairo also sees that Jonathan paid attention to her paragraph and becomes happy. Jonathan wanted Cairo to write a short story in the style of his favorite author. Cairo agrees, and Jonathan promises to give her full marks in the midterm if she does that. Cairo tells Jonathan that she has also read his book. Cairo remembers many lines from his books word for word, which impresses Jonathan. Jonathan invites Cairo to a place this weekend where they will discuss her assignment. Boris goes to dinner with Jonathan and his wife, where Winnie comes to take their order. Boris asks Jonathan if she is the girl he talks to, but Jonathan says no, her name is Cairo. But the matter is clear here, that Beatrice is now getting jealous of Jonathan's interest in Cairo, and she starts insulting Jonathan in front of Boris, saying, "You are not the same as a writer. You have not written anything for many years. You are just an ordinary teacher." On the weekend, Cairo went to a place told by Jonathan. Jonathan came from behind and sat near her. Here a man started reciting a poem. Jonathan was listening to the poem very carefully, and Cairo was only looking at Jonathan. After the poem, Cairo lit a cigarette, and outside, Jonathan also started sharing the cigarette. The next day, Cairo comes from the hotel wearing stylish dress and stands in front of Jonathan. When Boris asked about it, Cairo did not say anything, but when Boris left from there, Cairo sat and talked with Jonathan. They both were growing closer. While going towards the class, Jonathan got a message from his wife asking him to go out somewhere. Inside the class, Cairo tells Jonathan about her favorite author in whose style she would write a story. Jonathan was in a hurry to go home, so he quickly agreed. After he leaves, Winnie climbs on Jonathan's table and starts teasing Cairo. Then Boris comes there to meet Jonathan. Then Winnie starts teasing Boris, she puts his phone in her clothes. But Cairo also cannot find her phone. On the other hand, Jonathan's plan to go with his wife gets cancelled because he is busy with his work. Then when Jonathan got a call from Cairo, actually Jonathan had accidentally brought Cairo's phone in his bag. Jonathan and his wife's plan had got cancelled anyway, so Jonathan left to give Cairo her phone. When he reached outside Cairo's house, it started raining, and Cairo came towards Jonathan wearing a thin silk dress. Both of them started looking at each other. They both kissed. After this, Jonathan came back to his house. Here Cairo sent him a mail. Jonathan's wife tells him that, "I am not able to do my work while you are here." So Jonathan went to a small cabin where Jonathan printed the story sent by Cairo. He started reading it. It was an adult story, and the story is about a student and a teacher, exactly like Jonathan and Cairo. Jonathan gets excited after seeing all this, and he takes off his pants. But the next day in class, everything changes. Jonathan does not call Cairo like he used to call her before. Cairo asked why, and Jonathan said that the story was not good. There are so many wrong things in it. After that, when Cairo says that it is all about us, Jonathan clearly says that there is nothing like that between us. We are just a teacher and a student. Hearing this, Cairo was completely heartbroken. Jonathan tells her to either rewrite all this again, or I will fail you in the midterms. Cairo hears all this and gets angry. She says that my story is perfect. You're just afraid that I have written what you could not write. To humiliate Jonathan, Cairo calls him a third-class writer. She says, "If you have the guts, now make me fail." Cairo goes home crying and starts drinking with Winnie. On the other hand, tension was clearly visible on Jonathan's face. When Jonathan's wife asked what happened, Jonathan told her about the story written by Cairo. She also got excited after hearing the lines of the story, but before they both can do kiss or anything, Boris comes there, and nothing happened. On the other side, Cairo and Winnie are talking. Cairo tells Winnie that Jonathan was just pretending to be close to her. To distract themselves from all this, Cairo tells Winnie to message Boris. Winnie starts teasing Boris, but her words have no effect on Boris. To get Boris's attention, Cairo decides to take off their clothes, and they both send photos of themselves to Boris. As soon as Boris saw this, he left Jonathan's house, and suddenly Jonathan's wife got a call from Jonathan's school, and she had already found out about him there somehow. His wife was shocked to know that this is all happening just because of a story written by a student. She asks Jonathan, "Did anything else happen between that girl and you?" Jonathan clearly refuses. The next day, Cairo does not come to class. She was in the vice principal's office. The vice principal arrested both Cairo and Jonathan, asked what all this was going on. Cairo told everything clearly, that Jonathan gave me midterm assignment in advance, we smoked cigarettes together, we kept meeting outside the school. When it was Jonathan's turn, he answered the questions, but he was hesitant in giving. Seeing this hesitant chart, the vice principal understood everything and suspended Jonathan from the job. Outside the office, Boris explains to Jonathan that you should have seen your limits, and now because of crossing the limit, you were in this position. And Boris left the place. When Jonathan went home and told his wife that he had been fired from his job, his wife became suspicious of him again. She again asked him if something happened between the two of you, but Jonathan again refused. But his wife was not ready to believe him. She asked him if he had any feelings for that girl in his heart. They started fighting over each other. Suddenly, the fight escalated to such an extent that Jonathan's wife decided to divorce him. Winnie meets Cairo, and she says that because of what you did, Jonathan's job and even life got doomed. But now Cairo does not care about all this anymore. She says that Jonathan underestimated me, but now he will know who I really am. What am I? Cairo said all these things as her greatest achievements. Finally, Cairo says that Jonathan neither has his job and nor his wife. Will he be able to write again? And with this question, the movie ends here.